three environmental assessment questions. The fourth is the same question we had last year, but the previous three questions kind of looked at what do we know today? What do we know today in terms of the momentum we have? What do we know today in terms of the challenges that we know today that's changed recently? This is speculative. Both positive and negative trends or potential negative influences that could impact you in the coming years. And if you recall last year, I provided sort of four realms to think about. The first being sort of the social realm, the socio-cultural. What are the trends in society, human conditions, influences, economic conditions? The second being technological, how things work, and sort of the non-human side. I know last year we talked quite a bit about work from home and technology, what was being demanded, those kinds of things that you thought might impact you in the future. And the third being environmental, obviously the physical features of your community, regulatory interests, impacts, that kind of thing. And then the last one being political, what is going on, what do you foresee happening in the coming years politically? Talked a lot earlier about sort of the relationships you have, also the funding and resources that are coming. If you see that coming in the future, does that help you in the future, politically speaking, or do you think that changes? So again, just brainstorming what you see could be influences. The reason obviously we go through this part of the analysis is kind of thinking proactively what are some action steps you could take to take advantage or head off some of these potential influences.
And where do we want to start on any of them, or?
Yeah, anyone?
Go down the list.
I'm going to switch over to here, but you have this on your packet,
Okay.
so if you want to look at that in front of you.
How about that THC legalization step?
Mhm.
Yes.
Yeah,
Cannabis? Yeah, cannabinoid.
Well, there's the whole marijuana thing, like,
Mm-hmm.
will
Recreational
blow
marijuana.
THC out of the,
Hopefully they'll
Or is that what
put
you're
some
talking about?
framework on it.
Both.
Well, there's that and there's the edibles.
Right, developing policy for both internal and external. Police have some, the city should, mirror what's best interest for us, especially with new employees and existing employees.
well, for
My-
employee
my
use of
suggestion.
cannabis?
Medical marijuana, what does that mean for us?
Yeah, it'll have a lot of implications in terms of this is legalized, then do we have to change our policies internally? Yeah, there's a lot of different things it could impact.
Well, just because it still is not, it's still
Still
a federal
federally,
crime.
right,
It is for, say, DOT rules, but
for employment.
for employment purposes.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a challenging
Mhm.
thing to navigate with ADA. If you're using it for medical use, there's a variety of
Yeah.
things that we've, over the last several months, have been trying to, looking at and we'll be bringing forward.
Hopefully this one will be vetted a little more than the one that passed last year with the edibles and all that, which has no hints on
the one
it.
that passed by accident?
Yeah,
Put a little
well,
more thought
by
into it.
accident for some and by sneakiness for others. I'd say there's some trends in terms of housing and housing policy that has been getting momentum or been discussed a lot lately that could have some very significant impacts on us. There was legislation introduced last year, and everything I've been hearing so far is that it's going to be pretty much all the parts that I think would be negative for us would be copied. Some of the parts that maybe would have been neutral to positive, probably removed, and some additional stuff that's either irrelevant or also negative added. So, seems to be trending in the wrong direction there, but that could have a huge impact.
No more development.
They make those changes. Yeah.
This town is becoming, there are well, 20 years ago, 100% of people who lived in Corcoran were born in America. And we're having a lot more people that weren't born in America in our town.
It's true.
There's no judgment there, it's just a fact.
Population diversity.
Yeah, much more diverse.
Diversification.
Yeah. You're either Lutheran or Catholic.
Yeah, that's what it was.
That's what
Yeah.
it was.
We're just like a microcosm, but it's hitting us now for the first time
Yeah.
on a bigger scale.
We don't care who you are as long as you go to country days and practical.
It's kind of like it, yeah,
Huh?
yeah.
Well, we have the spillover issues of crime,
Yeah.
impact of the greater metro area.
We have a state that's 100% blue, and there are issues in our town that, there are some issues that'll be decided legislatively that will impact our town more than others. Like roads, for example, there's no appetite to do roads. Some of the crime stuff.
There'll be a lot of issues.
Yeah.
And it's unusual for Minnesota. We haven't had very many where the legislature and the governor is all one party. Like what, once since the 90s, maybe?
Yeah, I think so.
Mm.
I thought we had 2 years under Dayton that it was
Could have been.
all.
Yeah, that might have been the one. Because I know before that, all the way back to at least Ventura, it wasn't. And he was
Yeah.
his own thing.
Well, we also have economic issues that'll impact us too.
Interest rates.
Econa.
Interest rates, yeah. Inflation.
Yep.
So you got supply chain to that?
Finding employees
Yeah,
for anything.
yeah, tight labor.
I think there's kind of a combination of environmental, political, that when you talk about regulatory matters, but also, we experienced it being in Hennepin County before with just the politics, as you mentioned, light rail, things like that, that don't necessarily impact our community, that come quickly. And now we're also, that's compounded now at the state level, that I can tell you that even just this session, the amount of bills moving quickly, because they don't need to spend time in committees and stuff, things are being pushed through very rapidly because they know the votes exist. And I think the same, so in the same thing that we've experienced at the county level for a long time, things moving through quickly, not always being heard or considered when the choices are made. I think we'll start seeing more of that at the state level as well, where people are not interested in listening necessarily to what.
Yeah.
might
Some
be
of the
it.
committees I've watched have been just I mean, it was a committee for the sake of holding a meeting and nothing else. No listening, no debating, just
You know,
someone will raise an objection. Well, we're gonna move on. and approve it on a party line, and
Yeah, the first hearing on cannabis, they allowed the speakers 90 seconds before they
I saw that.
moved them on, so.
Watershed, the watershed rule,
Yeah.
or the increase in those rules with pervious
Oh,
surface.
the MS4?
Yeah. Some of the-
Change has been made,
Those
we'll
are
see the
supposed to
impact.
come every 5 years, it could be increasing, and there could be more chloride rule regulations coming.
I was just thinking about those changes that Elm
Yeah.
Creek with the surface treatment.
Are there any positive influences for our town?
Depends on how you look at all of these, I suppose.
Yeah.
Well, we've kind of framed them in a negative way, I guess.
Population one's just is what it is.
Yeah, I suppose.
Maybe the
Oh, yeah, that's,
continued support of country days and some of those events. Those seem to be quite popular, or
Yeah.
community events, and,
it is becoming bigger.
yeah, I feel like.
It has a Z.
P-A-Z-E.
Thank you.
Unrelated to the first item on the list. Well, the events are getting larger, but the volunteers are getting harder to find.
Less.
Yeah.
I have a big group of people that are looking for volunteer stuff up at Bellwether.
Yes.
So,
Good.
yeah.
It's about time you guys pitched in.
We need more bouncers.
Us guys.
I'm just kidding.
Does that mean Country Days has to be done like at 7 PM? Did I say that all out? I'm sorry, everybody up in Bellwether.
That's funny.
I think we're seeing good community buy-in from a lot of our engagement stuff. I mean, people are
Yeah.
hungry for it. I think we're seeing it, and we're just trying to keep up with them. I mean, in addition to the community expectations, we touched on it earlier with what they believe, what they want government to provide, but I think we're seeing strong engagement, even on the public safety end, even more so than other communities. But we have active participants, I think.
Yeah, I think we would've, if the weather would've cooperated, we would've saw a lot more participation just in that holiday event we did.
And even with the bad weather, there was a good number of people
Right.
out waiting for us. So,
So,
With all these new people, it will probably be kind of fun to create an identity, something we all have struggled with. We'll have other people that will want to have a say in that. Maybe our outcome will be better.
and I think some of the conversation around that in the past has been, does that happen once St. Teresa's in and we have a start of a downtown area? I don't know, but kind of built along what we talked about on one of the previous ones of building that area up might be a trend of more community events and stuff like that in that area. I know we've talked about the holiday toy drive, maybe ending it there with tree lighting or something like that. I think it'd be kind of a central area, which we don't have for anything right now.
The park could provide that too.
Park too?
When that
Yep.
gets updated.
Even if it's not updated.
Yeah, you could put a Christmas tree in.
That is true, you could.
Huh?
Yeah.
Put it anywhere.
Yeah,
There's lots of room.
yep, anywhere where people can park or get to.
Delano puts on a nice tree lighting ceremony. Call them for notes.
There you go.
Other trends or influences?
These guys got our internet faster over the last 6 months.
Or it will be in a year-ish.
Yep.
That-
Broadband's coming to those underserved areas, 500 homes.
550.
It is a pretty big technical upgrade for people.
Yeah, some people had really, really, really bad service, if any.
with the impact of water,
Mm-hmm.
you know, the expansion of water is what's driving growth in that northeast area where we had to do the moratorium because of such growth interest.
Right.
It'll just multiply, and as this area develops out, it'll be driven further.
I would maybe add, in addition to housing policy, like housing trends in the market. I know one thing that we've seen and maybe been worried about and started taking steps towards some sort of action is the rental market really picking up in this area. I know it happened in Maple Grove. And that's something that we are aware of and should be aware of, and probably will continue to be a trend in the future.
I think it'd be great if we could do things to encourage. The housing style is one thing, multifamily housing is potentially separable from rental. If there are things that we could do to encourage the development of condos versus rentals to create more home ownership opportunities for people and avoid the limitation at that lower end of the market that a lot of folks encounter, where there isn't much that's affordable. Condos can be, they aren't always, but they could be. My understanding is they're not usually preferred by the market because of the warranty difference. If you build condos, it's a 10-year commitment to those residents that you'll fix issues. With rentals, it's 1 year or 2 years. So I don't know if there's a lot that's a proven city adoptable mechanism to encourage condos, but that might be favorable for us.
Sounds like a Jeremy research
Yeah,
project.
PUD, we just are gonna talk about PUDs out there.
But yeah, good thinking.
I feel like Corcoran has gained political influence over the last year, and I think keeping that momentum going would be good. The more we can influence our surroundings, the more say we have.
Last 7 years, is that what you said?
Well, I think more so in the last few years that's picked up steam a little bit. Since you got on the council, John.
I think, so he's going with 7 years?
This-
That's a lot.
All right, yeah, pretty good list there of trends and influences. Any other items that need to go on this list before we move on? All right, well, we're to the brainstorming of goals, and what goals you want to try and accomplish. And part of the trick of setting, or part of the trick of having an effective goals program and work plan is setting goals that are, as the acronym says, SMART goals. But goals that are specific, that identify exactly what it is we're looking to do. Anyone can pick it up and understand the objective of the goal, that it's measurable, that we can look back a year from now and have the same conversation and say, all right, how did we do on this? Attainable, something that we control, something that we have the ability to accomplish, something that's relevant. I don't generally think most of what, in all the years that we've done this and years that we've done it in Delano, you've done it here, helped other cities, the goals that we come up with are relevant to what we do. But lastly, time-bound goals as well. And we talked about this last year, I recall when we started to do some goal refinement, making sure that they're challenging goals. They're not something that we could simply accomplish in a couple of weeks, but we also want to make sure that it's not a 5-year, 10-year goal. And it's something that we struggle to try and accomplish. So with those things in mind, now is going to come a time where I ask you to just brainstorm all of the things that you potentially could come up with as goals for the coming year. Some of the resources that we've had tonight, we left off with last year's list. We evaluated the high priority and priority. That's a place to start. Let's look at that list and see if there are things on there that are still relevant that you want to include on a potential goal list. You have some information from your planning commission that I will pause And if
Yeah.
somebody wants to just quickly explain
Sure.
what came to the council from the planning staff, that would be.
Yeah, so from the planning commission, they did have a variety of different goals and priorities that they outlined. They wanted to look at nonconformities within the zoning ordinance. They wanted to look at traditional and non-traditional farm animals within chapter 82, and then wanted to receive some better training and understand the role of homeowner associations and their ability to place more restrictions on properties. So that really came from the planning commission side, and then we did have some information from Natalie outlining the priorities that planning staff like to see. And where's my, I don't happen to have that in front of me, so give me this one. Pull that up. This one. The recommendations that she had for items related to planning would be minor cleanup of items within the zoning ordinance, updating our landscaping performance standards, looking at temporary signs for community events that we've talked about, doing some creation and updates to city maps, and then her probably biggest priority for updating sections of code would be really looking at those zoning district standards, so those underlying zoning districts. So if we do want to see things that come in outside PUDs, that we are able to make something move forward. So those would be her recommendations. And then the Parks and Trails Committee did have a couple items that they wanted to see as well. And their items that they wanted to focus on would be the Diamond Lake Trail, continuing to work with them, Open Space Park and Boardwalk and Bellwether, the City Park remaster, understanding park dedication fund allocations, some educational signs at Wildflower Park, and then creating a vision for what those park standards look like.
Thank you, Jess, so let me put you on the spot.
No, that's okay.
For reading to you guys. So we have last year's goals, we have the recommendations from planning, both the commission and staff, some ideas from the Park and Trails Committee. And then we have the brainstorming that we have done, that we've went through, looking at trends and influences, positive momentum, challenges, and then just kind of what are some of the changing things that we've seen over the last year that impact us. I'm going to pause for probably about 5 minutes or so, 5-10 minutes, and let you jot some notes down. If there are things that you can go through and identify, and then we can kind of go around the room and come up with some of those brainstorm goals. You may recall from past years, at this point, quantity is more important than quality of necessarily how it's framed up. We're going to have several of these draft goals that are really kind of identifying the same thing, and we're going to merge them together and consolidate them before we start setting priorities. Lastly, I just want to point out consistency with core strategies, and you see it on the staff progress report that was in front of you as well tonight. You'll see that we have a core strategy, we have strategic objectives, and those are the long-term things as we saw that chart before. And how do we continue working towards those long-term strategies that are listed on the screen. So coming up with goals to work towards those as well. So, any questions? If not, I'll be quiet and maybe give everybody 5 minutes to work on it.
Is this yours? I just took it.
That's Jessica's one.
No worries. Do you need any more of that?
No, I'm good.
I've got the rest of that report. I only gave you both parts that we were talking about.
I think we'll get started with putting some up there, but please keep working on notes if you have any ideas. Anybody want to be first, Jerry?
You always know to ask me, don't you? I've got a bunch. You just want one from each person, or want me to give you everything?
Works.
Why don't you just give me what you got?
Okay. I'll start with, do we have enough engineering expertise or ability to run our own projects, especially for parks and roads?
In terms of a goal, maybe,
I think evaluate resource need or opportunity for internal engineering capability to reduce reliance on external vendors.
I think that's kind of been a goal for a while, not necessarily engineering specific, but,
We started with planning that way.
right.
And Kevin's great, but Kevin's only 1 minute, so.
This is true.
Kevin's a byproduct of this happening
Yeah,
5 years
exactly.
ago.
Mhm. So when you see, cost of a project like Hackamore, where, 20% of the project cost is being paid to an outside engineering consultant, are we getting 10 person years for that cost, or is it, how much markup, how much opportunity for recapturing some of that expense is there? Systems to incentivize condos versus apartments was another one I had. Create a new approach for park design to more rapidly develop the parks that have already been dedicated. We spend a lot of time on City Park, and I'm just envisioning, is there a way we can do the other, at least 2, possibly 3, maybe even 4 parks more quickly than we did City Park?
Jerry, could you restate the first part of that?
Develop a new approach for park design to more rapidly construct dedicated parks.
Nothing will be as big as City Park though, so they should be quicker in and of themselves, hopefully.
I think establish park standards for what our expectations should be for those designs, which I think Jessica CB had in her list. Deploy automatic license plate readers in key areas of the city for the police to track stolen vehicles and provide early warning.
What was that system we talked about, Matt?
Flock is one of
Flock.
the vendors that I've been looking into. They're the ones that had the best, I think, data management perspective that I've seen from ones out there.
I also have research and pilot an electric squad car, see if that provides cost savings long-term. And then continue to expand the retention program beyond the initial step. I don't know if that requires it to be a goal. We kind of already are on that path, but I think it's important to continue.
Is it across all departments?
I only meant police, but potentially others, I guess.
I would say across all departments, whether it's the same is maybe a question, but
There's difference between the retention, I think, across
right,
them, so.
yeah, for sure.
Reduce density requirements and comp plan for single family by increasing them in multi-use? Or maybe leverage existing developments to enable that without significant changes? I think we should evaluate our parking requirements and determine if they're excessive. Potentially save some land. Or allow it to be retained as green space or something else. I'd like to see us take ownership of roads and trails sooner with some kind of a systematic approach, just because I know I've heard resident complaints about roads that haven't been turned over and how difficult it is to get HOAs or whoever to plow adequately or maintain things. So I'd like to look at what we could do so that projects don't just linger open as long as they have in the past. Take ownership of roads and trails sooner, systematically, from developments. I think overall, evaluate road designations and pedestrian crossings to ensure pedestrian safety. And I know we've talked about crosswalk standards a couple times in late 2022. I would make that one a priority as well. I think it would be great if we could find a way to dovetail that with creating sort of a sense of place for Corcoran and tie into the natural environment. So if there's a way to do those in an artistic way that's unique to the city, I think that could be kind of a cool opportunity too.
Need that one again, sorry.
Sure. Develop Corcoran-specific crosswalk standards.
Oh, yeah, I got
And then for drought resilience, I notice in some neighborhoods where common areas aren't irrigated, you can get dead brown patches for significant parts. It might be nice to incentivize bee lawns or things that are more drought tolerant in those areas that won't be irrigated. So incentivize bee lawns and drought tolerant plantings in common areas. BEE.
All right. We can fine-tune
That's all I had.
I do think conservation of water will become a topic if we move forward with a treatment plan,
Yeah.
more than it is today. And there's a variety of ways you can address that.
That's good. Dean, what would you like to add to the list?
Oh, jeepers. Mine are a little bit more vague than Jeremy's. With the two recent submittals and stuff, industrial park ordinances revisiting, size, what we would really like to see in those parks, those industrial parks in those zones. A very vague statement, trail corridors, and I write behind it specifically city trail corridors. I know we're depending a lot on the Three Rivers one running through town, but kind of dovetailing that in, a little bit more direction involvement from parks to pick those zones and areas. And I'll even expand it a little bit further, more input from parks and planning commission, instead of just going off of current ordinances and current visions and past visions. We've got a tremendous number of new people on both planning and parks. Their thoughts and ideas to maybe reintroduce or revamp some of those things.
Yeah.
Right now, when I watch, they come in, they look at what staff has given them, and then either bless it or not bless it. And we don't hear a lot of their thoughts and ideas
What they'd
on
like to
how
see
to make it
change.
better.
Yeah.
On the planning side, I hear the comments of, we've got ordinances, if they don't fit the ordinances, the planning commission says no, the council says yes. They want an explanation back, why we said yes, and I'd like more input from those groups,
Yep.
thoughts and ideas, if I'm making sense on what I'm saying. I'm going all over the place. And I'm sorry to bring this up, but I've heard it a lot. And this is a big one to bite off in my mind, is Corcoran's vision statement, the logos and such. That gets thrown back at us so many times that we've got a barn, we've got a farmhouse, and we've got geese and those kind of things. We're evolving, we're changing from that to something else. I don't know what it is, but I would like that visited. I know we've got a fire rescue, first responder support plan and such. I'm nervous that while we may be close to being on track for that, I would like that accelerated if at all possible. To get there sooner, but I know that's limited by funds available for that. And one thing that I've always wanted, that I was fortunate enough to be part of over in Maple Grove, the involvement of commercial, industrial, and major landowners in this city. Instead of throwing ideas at us and wondering if they would stick, and I go back to the most recent one by Mama G's, that wasn't even close to our comp plan of switching it over to all residential. Would like thoughts and ideas from those major landowners, and again, our commercial business owners, our industrial business owners. What do they need? What would they like to see? And then again, plans coming to us that align more with our comp plan than just we're trying to do, can you change this up? I'm nervous if we start changing our comp plan in multiple ways and such, that whole comp plan just goes out the window. I know there's regulations and stuff from the Met Council and all of those things. We don't need to be in a big swirl all the time. I think it can be a little bit more controlled. Did you keep up with everything I said?
Try. I don't know, let me know if I misstated anything.
No, I think you typed it better than I said it. Thank you.
Absolutely.
So we're running out of new ideas here. One short-term goal is we need to be extremely quick to react to incoming legislation, particularly in this legislative period. I want to finish the giant PUD project, and this will come up Thursday, but I don't want to, I want to have our PUD, you don't have to type this, but the PUD scoring system to be merely a suggestion, and it will give developers some insight, but still retain the ability to turn down turn down projects. And part of that will be in an effort to stop these cookie cutter developments we keep seeing. So I would say end cookie cutter developments is the goal. I want to have the budget to be population growth plus inflation in the city budget. And then and this is just an echoing of his, I can see it up there already, but more specifics on identifiable property for future parks. That's it for me.
Some of mine were echoed already, but a lot of you guys, I want to see that we develop a trail maintenance plan.
I'm gonna have nothing left.
Break time for Tom.
And get that up and running so we can use it for next year. I'd like to see the open space park near the Ravinia development finished and get trails in that so it can be actively used as a public amenity. I'd like to make sure we get this off-road trail plan updated and have a vision for that with the planning or the parks and trails, and maybe get some phasing plans into it if we can figure something out there. I echo the remarks about finishing the PUD stuff. I think we need some education and outreach in the community what an actual PUD is, too. And I would definitely like to see more around zoning of industrial and commercial. Differentiate what do we feel is light industrial versus heavy industrial, and do we need to identify more appropriate areas or expand those areas, or think about buffers in those areas and what those buffers would look like. And I would, back to parks, I would like the Parks and Trails to think about future programs and what we might have in the community, or what we would like to see as public amenities, and make sure that we're planning, having the foresight to plan for those long term. That's what I have.
Okay. Most of mine have been said, but I have a couple kind of very specific ones. I'd like to see some continued technological improvements. I kind of had 3 examples. Want to be like something like laserfish or laserfish?
We call it.
One of the two.
Yeah.
That system or something like it, with like the public access, public portal. Medina is a good example of a city that implements that, and I think it helps a lot of different issues that we've had either commissioners or us on council or residents inquire about, that I think it would solve. Something, we've talked about this before too, similar to Municode or another site that hosts your city code. That's just the one I'm familiar with. And then potentially I don't know what I would call this, but cities like Orono or Maple Grove have
Agenda parsing?
Yes, agenda, video combined, and you can click on this part of the agenda and it brings you to that part of the video, and it's all hosted in one spot. So something like that, and those type of things. This will be my 3rd year in a row putting this one on there, but public notice policy, increasing the distance on that.
Oh, we already did that.
Don't
Not
think
really?
so.
We haven't,
Okay.
it was one of the ones that we still wanted to do, we just hadn't gotten to
Yeah.
that. But if we look at some If we do minor code edits, that could be something,
Yeah.
that's something.
Toss
that
them
could
in.
be
Well, when we do the PUD code update, it's a related item.
looked
Could
at.
use the same public hearing for that.
What about public notification on sketch plans?
What about it? Like getting.
Well, we don't do anything right
Shouldn't we?
now, right? So people go, all of us come in and complain about, this is the first I've heard about it. Well, we have the sketch
Wasn't that-
plan that most people don't hear about unless they're following our agenda. And then
Right.
it'll go to planning commission.
Wasn't that
which at that-
discussed in something that's like in this week's packet?
Within the
Did we?
PUD ordinance, that's a
Oh, okay.
change with any PUD sketch plan. That would be the case. We don't currently have that for any.
Well, it was about neighborhood meetings.
It was, yes, neighborhood meetings, which is a similar,
Yeah.
they'd have to notice a neighborhood meeting, which would be similar.
But that's part of the preliminary, right?
Well, that was what the
This was part
conversation
of
was
the
about. Should it
sketch
be
plan.
Oh,
at
okay.
sketch or should it be at preliminary? And
Okay.
I think
As it's
staff was
drafted, I
saying,
think.
I think Natalie was saying there was initially some conversation about doing it at sketch. There's been some concerns heard from other cities about why that might not be the best. And I think she was leaning towards recommending more towards preliminary, but
Should happen before preliminary, right? That's the,
yeah.
I believe it was before preliminary, but maybe after sketch, like in between.
Because I think the issue, and this is probably getting too much in the weeds, I think the issue was a developer could go have that meeting and have a bunch of conversation and blow back about something that we have not seen at all. And so there's not really any,
and we would say no to potentially.
potentially, yeah.
Yeah.
It's like if the one that we turned away the other week, or other month, if that went out to a neighborhood meeting beforehand, probably, I mean, end result would have been the same, but it probably would have been pretty
Gas station.
unnecessary. Oh, I was thinking of the rental and.
Up by Mama
Oh, yeah,
G's.
yeah.
And then,
Yeah.
continental
Oh, yeah.
Yep.
properties.
I could see it then, I could see pushing back between sketch plan and the preliminary at planning commission. So that you could get a lot of involvement at that point.
People need to be able to come here with napkin ideas and not get crushed by public
Right.
opinion. Even, they'll get crushed by public opinion later, but we have to have, if it's a bad idea, we have to have people be able to come in and just ask our opinions before.
Mm-hmm. I agree. I think, but I also see what you're saying with trying to get it out to people as early as possible. There's probably some balance in there.
And we were envisioning hosting those meetings at, I encourage that we'd host them the day of planning commission, because we have staff here already, so if we had those meetings, have them at 5 o'clock the night of the meeting, so that way they can, even if it's in between the month between, it might push our processes a little bit, but certainly something to consider.
The rest of the big ones were already said. Develop an RFP policy for city services. We've talked about it a little bit, but we haven't really gotten into any of the specifics, which is kind of the important stuff for that.
Can I add one?
Yeah?
Bring planning inside the city.
Fully?
It's
Or
kind of
we're
what
going
To
to continue
reduce-
to?
I talked
Yes,
about
to
engineering.
reduce
we're talking about the engineering
perceived
sector.
conflict of interest or
Gotcha.
actual conflict of interest.
Could I
Gotcha,
add
got-
in Journey's number one, which was evaluate resource need and availability for internal engineering, could we say engineering and planning? Or do you think it's something?
That's up to Jeremy, I don't wanna jump into his idea.
I would keep them separate, because they might be ranked differently.
Okay.
See?
Thanks, John.
Can I ask one
Yeah,
more question?
sure.
Do we have a decent plan for City Hall, Public Works?
Aren't you on the,
Maturity enough and
Yeah,
everything
you
else?
should know that one.
aren't you on
Yeah,
the subcommittee about
We
that?
need to continue to come, Matt and I were just talking today about scheduling your next meeting for that. That's an important piece, so that's on my list of goals.
Oh, yeah, we
To
got, we're
continue
gonna keep
to
going.
work that.
I just, it
There was one.
was stuck in my head and I didn't want to say it.
There was one suggested by David Feehan as part of the Pioneer Trail project that we consider designating Corcoran as a food-focused innovation district,
Yeah.
which was sort of an informal designation, doesn't imply, financial backing or lenient zoning or anything, but more or less a declaration that we're interested in that as a topic. And he suggested that we adopt a resolution, and then we have the county endorse the resolution, and then use that as sort of a follow-up to how you market Corcoran to businesses, as this is the kind of business that we would be interested in supporting. And he mentioned like vertical agriculture or innovative sustainable farming practices, restaurants, food processors, as businesses that would be in line with our vision for the city.
Is that a motion?
It's not a motion.
I'm just kidding.
It's an item.
And that had what to do with Pioneer?
He was the brother
Include
of
feedlots
Mr.
Milk
Utz,
processing center.
and he was talking through cities that he's worked with doing similar things, and found it to be a viable way to get interest, especially with some of the companies that are already in the Minneapolis area, like Cargill and General Mills, Land O'Lakes. There's a lot of potential for companies to site in a place like Corcoran.
Sure. Yeah, I'm all good. I think that's all. Everything else got checked off already.
Sounds great. To Dean's point, continue to evaluate facilities on a land planning program. You create that land planning program. Look at employee handbook updates, which could include those THC and marijuana policies, as well as other updates to maintain legal compliance, as well as look to see if there are any best practices we could adopt for employees. Create or update the sign ordinance for community events. That'll be really helpful for moving that forward with our community events.
Do we just create an exemption for the one-time use?
What we had talked about is creating as part of your special event the permitting special events, permitting the signs as well, so that way you could put out signs. Because right now, out there, we have a surprising amount of our Lions and JC's events that technically don't meet our rules.
Yeah.
I think it was about that, and also like upping the number of
And upping the
months.
number of months. or
It wasn't
times
too
you could
much,
do.
but it would get them to where they need for
Yeah.
events in Minnesota. They're not doing the stuff in February.
Dean talked a little bit about this with the industrial park ordinances, but updating those underlying zoning districts, which could include the industrial piece. Creating a community engagement fund that would allow, when we get donations, to be for more of our community outreach, whether it's the holiday toy and food drive or other events. And then potentially seek donations for the park remaster or other identified goals.
Ready?
Yep.
Develop an IT architectural roadmap, systems integrations, citywide and department-wide. Expand, develop an asset management and fleet management need system for now, life cycle and replacement. Create effective efficiencies for community services. Some are already being worked on, but just expand on that. Online services, public works, city needs, employee needs, however you want to shorten that.
You have to start making the create effective efficiencies.
Efficiencies for community services, online services.
What does that mean?
So, for example, if somebody, currently, if a community member wants to reach out to Public Works, oftentimes it's through email, through a phone call, which isn't an effective way to manage community needs. We need more of a work order system to start baby steps, creating some form of an online service for residents to go and make a report, so it's more efficient instead of trying to have, as we grow, it's overloading that human component. So creating those efficiencies as an online service might be something to look at.
Sounds like a ticket system?
Yeah, more
Okay.
like a ticket, a work order type system to help eliminate that, those that could be missed or.
You probably still need some type of personal input though, because a
Correct.
lot of our
Correct.
community doesn't have access to computers.
Correct, so have a system, you know, besides that, continue what we're doing, but also offer the online service to help with staff,
Yeah.
that human part.
It sounds computer, but it's
Yeah.
actually to improve personal. It would
Yeah.
actually add quicker interaction with the public is really the intention, because right now, we can leave messages, if they go to the Public Works, it goes out there, and if we're snow plowing back-to-back date for 3 days in a row, we don't have a chance to call them back.
Yeah.
So there's just a way to notify them. If there's a snow event happening, you know, our Public Works assistant, administrative assistant would be the lead for that communication in conjunction with other admin staff. So it's really to help engage them earlier. They might get some sort of feedback that's not personal, but there'll be an engagement
Right.
factor
Yeah.
that maybe we're struggling with just due to how we're spreading our staff around. So it sounds like we're avoiding them, but we're really engaging them. Does that make sense?
Yeah, does.
Because if they don't get a call back within like 2 hours, they call us.
I mean, you have to call me.
Yeah,
And you have to pull over the
I'm sure you love
snowplow.
that.
create a human resources roadmap also as we grow, what positions are needed, what does that mean? Also look at our current contractual positions, as some of you already brought up. What does it look like to have a full-time IT person? You know, planning, engineering, those positions. And then my last one, policies. You know, Jess had also brought this up, but reviewing that consistency, especially between city policies for employees, police policies for employees, making sure that any gaps are filled in, and that they're consistent and there's no contradicting language between the different policies.
I'm going boring engineering here, and it could probably be incorporated, but I'm bringing up that right-of-way ordinance. And then also, I know Councilmember Schultz has advocated this for, he probably forgot about it, but he did advocate it. We do have to really establish a streetlight policy as we onboard these new neighborhoods, what that looks like. So we budget for them now, but we'll be taking probably a good chunk of them over here in the spring, so we want to set the next budget, how we want to handle that, if there's support for it.
You guys took all of my good ideas.
It's hard to go last.
Yeah, no, I think you guys touched on a lot of them. I mean, I think there's one of the things that was on my list that I think you guys touched on in a couple of ways was just improving our capacity for employee focus. So part of that being, as we're trying to recruit and retain employees, which you guys touched on, but also as you talk about bringing engineering in-house, I see Kevin spending a lot of his time engineering, and he's hard to get a hold of, hard to work with, because he's doing so much engineering. So, you know, what is that, as we look at that, what is the capacity to free up Kevin's time for leadership and people and hiring and recruitment and retention and just kind of that people focus across the organization? And I think we're trying to get better. We're carving out times. We're bringing in trainers for our supervisors. We're trying to create that time, but I think unless we carve out the times from a leadership level, I think we're just trying to play catch up. So that was the first one I had. I think you touched on accelerate the planning for the fire service. I think that's good. We haven't, as a community, I think we're obviously we're still tracking the data on it. We're on track, but I think we're getting to the point now where we're seeing multiple things change, and I think we're starting to hit those action points. What does that mean for us? Sorry, these aren't easy to write down,
Yeah.
but as we're looking at that, you know, we just got notice today that the Rogers Fire Chief is retiring. You know, I know the Loretto Fire Chief is going to be retired. These are people that were integral in our planning, but at the same time, we're starting to see the formulaic increase in the Rogers Fire Department. And with all of these things changing is kind of starting to be the moving pieces, and trying to have bandwidth to take action on all of them as we start talking about facilities, personnel, lines of business or service that, or as we're going to stagger what we're willing to take on and invest as a city versus what we expect our partners to pick up. It's fairly complex. I think we have the roadmap there, but I think we're hitting that action point in coming up here. That's one of the reasons why for discussion in the budget was the fire person, somebody with dedicated bandwidth to develop those. So that more of a,
So we had accelerated planning and action for fire services, is that sufficient?
I think as long as you guys know my perspective on it, I think that's sufficient, so.
Fire, rescue, and first responder, if you could
Yep.
add those.
Yep.
That way we don't leave anything out.
We talked about the Rogers contract in specific earlier,
Renegotiate the Rogers
or
contract?
at least evaluate what our options are to it. Should we include that as just part of the
It's probably part of it.
fire planning, or?
I think maybe we understand it before we
Yeah.
start negotiating it.
Right. Yeah.
And you kind of want to negotiate from a,
Place of knowledge.
The direction I'm going to, I don't know who said it tonight, but the medicals that the police is responding to and such, is there a contract we do with North? Or they just happen to be in the general vicinity and,
Well, in fact, we're seeing North having increased response times, decreased availability out in our area pretty substantially as they're getting stretched thinner and thinner. And they're, as an organization, struggling for people and resources to
Right.
cover. Layer on top. So actually, the fire departments out in the area have been a big part of it. Obviously, our police officers are responding. But yeah, we're getting more and more medicals, which is, again, for the parts, or our fire departments that are on a formulaic adjustment to our contracts will gradually start taking more and more of their budget. And we see the changes, or I'm sure
Okay.
most of you are aware of the changes being talked about with Hamel and Loretto fire departments combining. And there's a lot of things changing at this point. I think it's also probably going to be delicate in how we approach the Rogers contract. With them losing Chief Feist, they lose a lot of historical knowledge. It probably would have been easier to have the discussion while he was still here. But it is what it is.
when is his retirement date?
April.
He's still here.
Yeah.
No, I'm just kidding.
could we change it to a semi-retired date and have him spend 5 years with us on, 38 hours a week instead of 40 hours?
Retired cops and firefighters don't
I
usually
know.
last that
I
long in
know,
retirement.
I know.
Give him his retirement.
So those were the main ones for me. I mean, like I said, we're on the edges of a lot of, seeing the benefit, obviously, in the IT and the process improvements talked about. I appreciate you guys bringing up the opportunities like the ALPRs as being, a force multiplier for our police department. And some of that technology is really important, so I appreciate you being open to it and forward-looking. Obviously, support all of the public safety related items that are up there. You know, we're keeping our eyes on the electric vehicle market, trying to find a point where we can be practical and make headway in that area, and so I appreciate all of you guys paying attention to the public safety needs.
I rode in a Mustang, the SUV one version.
Yep.
What a vehicle.
I've heard I know one agency that has the
Yeah.
Mustang EV, I think it was Eden Prairie.
Eden Prairie's got it.
Yep, and they also have a Tesla. It sounds like they've had a lot
Got a
better
fleet
luck
of
with
Cybertrucks.
Mustangs.
The Mustang is way better than, yes.
Yep, and it's just the holdup right now is having a hard time getting equipment. Last I had talked to them, it's not, the mass production of it is not being done yet. We're up at the upfitters, they use the same ones that we use. They had the manufacturers for a lot of the police equipment up there taking measurements on Eden Prairie's vehicle
Yeah.
as they were trying to spec out and mass produce the equipment, so it's,
And then the
Close.
timeline to get the vehicle is,
yeah, there's lead times. They
it
haven't-
was 2 years. The person that I had the opportunity to ride with got it in 9 months.
Did you get, did you do something bad and you had to ride in the police car?
No, it wasn't a police car, it was a private Mustang SUV. It was a VP of XL put in for a request to buy one, and
Okay.
she was told it would be 2 years, and she got it in 9 months. I don't know if there was an affiliation with being part of XL or whatever, but what a ride.
There are some,
Gosh,
parts, you can't hot seat them. For instance, one shift can't just pass it off to the next shift. They have a built-in need for downtime.
you gotta plug it in.
That our current ones don't, so if we needed to, there's times we'll run a vehicle 24 hours, just the product of having a smaller fleet. We have enough cars for what we run right now, and we have enough bandwidth that if one goes down or in for repairs, but as soon as we start losing two, we're starting to get tight. So it's just a consideration as we look at those things, taking all those things into account as to what our operational impacts are. I know that GM is coming out with that Ford Lightning is out as an electric truck, as is the Chevy said that they would be coming out with their electric truck as well. So there's some options out there, but those would less likely be not likely be patrol vehicles.
You can't just pull up to a gas station, put 20 gallons away in it and drive away.
I like that you used the pun, our current fleet, when we were talking about electric vehicles.
Current,
It's a high voltage idea.
suppose we'd have a plug-in station up at the
At the bus stop.
new substation up here.
The bus stop.
Get you on motorcycles to save money.
Yeah.
All right, so I'm counting up.
We
about
digressed.
45 draft goals here. I think you all did an excellent job of trying to make them concise, achievable, measurable, all of those things that we looked at. As you know, we'll go through and everybody will get to pick a certain number of them. We'll count them up, we'll add them up, see where they shake out. Before we do that, I need your help coming up with any potential mergers, modifications. After we vote on them and we put together a list that comes out in the draft report, we will be able to wordsmith them. I know I was jotting down what I heard. It isn't exactly what you said, so when we get to the final draft, it will be worded properly. But for now, this just gives you an idea which is, each one is. So if something you threw out sounds like something that someone else threw out, and we want to discuss merging some concepts together to reduce the number of them, now's the time.
I think you could combine establish park standards with develop a trail maintenance plan.
On park standards, are you talking about size of parks relative to the population?
I meant more like, when we have a park, it should have at least this for amenities. And maybe it can be something that the Parks Commission, picks from some options to figure out what they want to put into it. But I think having a standard rubric that we always try to achieve would be helpful. Like a park benches and a drinking fountain and a bathroom and trash
Canopies,
containers and a
canopies.
playground and a shade canopy.
Picnic table.
Yeah. based on certain size and population.
Mhm.
Is there any way I can get a printout of this? It might be easier to look at.
Yeah, that would be helpful.
Do you want to
Read
email it
what?
to me?
Do you have access to the,
I can, from here, print it,
okay.
if you Google, from the.
Glad I'm not the only one. Have
It's
trouble
a
seeing
little
it.
hard to
It
read.
does.
You guys old?
Yeah.
My eyes are.
Should have said at this end.
I've been like going like this as you move down the line, so I'm with you. Trying to see it.
If I try and blow it up to bigger print, we're not gonna get it all on one screen.
Yeah.
I got this, Rich. Give me just a moment, I'll put that.
So I think the idea was, establish park standards and trail maintenance plan, and
Mhm.
merging the two of them together, essentially giving the Parks Commission and staff and council here's what we need.
Mhm.
I don't like those merged ones, because then it's hard in the future years, like, you word salad something, so like it covers like 5 different things, and it's hard to, evaluate it. So the ones that we did the most sleuthing with were the hardest to say, well, we did this well, we did this well, we did this well, we did this well, but we didn't do this, you know, if there are 5 things in there, that's 5 goals and not just one.
I see what you're saying.
So it's hard to focus on something when there are 5 individual things.
Unless we're intentionally trying to say that we want to make sure that we're doing these together.
Yeah, yeah,
I
you're
think-
right. So we want to be judicious in, I think.
The rationale to cluster should be based on how much effort we think they would entail. Like, I would imagine the park standards is probably like an hour of conversation with the Parks Commission, detailing the things that they wanted to do.
I think it might be more than that, but
Right.
I think you
Yeah, I
have to
don't
come in
think
as some
they do.
formulaic thing, and what, if it's inside the MUSA, outside the MUSA, does it have access to water? I just think that trails, you probably have more of an immediate need on establishing a trail maintenance thing, because we're gonna be taking those on
Yeah.
as soon as Ravinia goes, right? Versus, I don't think we have any more development projects out there, residential, that we haven't seen yet, have we?
no.
You mean?
We don't have any
that are
sketch
Nothing
plan.
imminent,
new
no,
and
nothing
Or
imminent.
that are,
I mean, everything we have now already has a park either in it,
We don't have any applications for stuff that hasn't already come to council in some form.
or a sketch plan,
um,
other than what.
other than the two in, the Corcoran, the only ones like, are the one that Corcoran
Last week.
Farms and then the Pioneer Trail, those are the ones kind of in
And then
flux
hopes going for a
between
sketch plan.
trying to get entitled and entitled. And there might be some, I think we may have got a sketch plan like last Friday, I'm not sure, for a residential one.
Oh, okay.
So I mean, this is a time of year where they might ramp up again.
Okay.
They tore down the trees in 3 huge plots in our town. You'd think that there'd be something coming in for those.
What 3? The one on 30?
Did I say 3? I meant 2, on 30 and then Hackamore on 116. You'd think there'd be something.
Yeah, and I saw a truck the other day from company that owns that property out
Hackamore
there.
116, where they took the trees down there.
I don't know where they took the trees down.
They took them down 3 years ago?
Oh, that sounds right. I thought you meant there was like a recent.
What? Maybe it was less than that. I don't know,
I
but
don't remember that.
you don't?
Where's that at, Jen?
Hackamore?
Opposite of Tavera.
Yeah.
On the
The northeast corner of Hackamore and 116. I think it was 2.5 years ago, I feel like, 2 years ago.
Oh, in the Gagne property?
Mhm.
Oh, yeah.
And I don't think they're gonna tear down the trees along 30 to have it be farmland.
Right.
No, but I think that's more designed commercial, isn't it?
I don't know.
Well, that,
I don't think so.
that parcel was wet too, so there's gotta be,
There's a Gagne
A
Homes
wetland
truck
element
driving
there.
off of it the other day.
Oh, off that one, off 30?
No, no, no.
Oh, and the other.
Off of
one,
116 and
yeah. Anyways, that, we're digressing.
yeah, we are.
I mean, we definitely, could definitely happen, and we should be prepared for it, so. I think we could do them both, whether we do them separate or combined, it doesn't matter to me.
What if neither one of them makes our top 10?
And this discussion was probably not very useful.
If you put them together, they're marked, they'll make the top 10.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
Well, I
John,
can see where you
I would just say, you bring up
all
all,
planning
I don't even wanna
one,
cluster 4 or 5 things, so it
Planning,
makes it
or
impossible to
excuse me,
achieve,
park,
but at the same time,
board,
if there
they
are
have more involvement.
complementary ideas
Jeff,
Yeah, I know.
that are achievable,
Yeah, you did a good job of it, sort of separating them, but we did bump into
Here's
some of the
already-
stuff that maybe.
Go from there.
Would it be easier to combine
We
what's
want, I mean, you said.
planning
We
versus
want.
parks and trails amenities versus what's infrastructure and what's, administration type things?
Bigger,
Yeah.
wider road.
And then,
further
looking at them within the categories?
certainly can.
snow rim.
Can you compliment Natalie for the thorough list of stuff? Like, I look at it and like, we should do all of this.
Where is it?
Yeah, but I don't follow
Oh,
the
no.
part where she goes, we need to do, delete 1040.110 subsection 2S.
You don't remember what
duplicate of
1040.110
Well,
I don't remember what
is?
you was.
That shouldn't be
else
a
I
goal.
got.
Because Kevin said so.
It shouldn't be a,
There's a lot of Kevins.
It says a lot of Kevin said too.
oh, really? Oh, yeah. Couldn't, it seems
I
like
will
that
let
wouldn't,
her know.
if that was a goal for city council was to do that one thing.
Very specific thing.
I wanted you. Come on.
EPLPR.
There are a lot of Kevin wants
So,
too.
well, I
Evaluate.
suggested that maybe we combine them by discipline, so I was just kinda going through the list to say
Sure.
engineering, planning. I don't know if this doesn't make sense.
I think, and then you could group them together, and then it'd probably be a little bit easier to see, once you resort all the engineering ones together, and all the planning ones together, and all the,
Then Jess is gonna have to reprint all these.
That's okay. It doesn't not the.
We're still
not an
making
issue.
paper.
I just got a chance to print it on 11 by 17, and then I did a half sheet. So I'm working on my copier skills. I haven't used in a while.
Oh, my goodness.
Would have worked out on the other way on 11 by 17 maybe.
It wouldn't flip it. It was having some difficulties.
Still do a lot of reprints and not reach our average packet size, so.
Well, and
Yeah.
it printed over to the other side. I guess I'm usually on the other side, so.
Is there a way to add a new goal of being done with city council by 10 each meeting?
We actually could implement an ordinance. There are cities that if you haven't stopped by a certain time, you all get to decide whether or not we can continue it.
No, I mean,
I mean, don't we kind of already decide
we,
that?
we will run into problems of plans automatically getting.
Yeah.
That's-
Or we just have to say, we decide to continue because we have to. And then we're in the same boat as we are now.
right.
Well, it was, you guys had that as a previous,
A, and yeah.
That was as a
admin
previous-
would be HR ones
Yeah.
too.
a previous goal was to streamline council meetings, and I think that was 2 years ago when we started moving, at that point, there was a big shift of moving a lot of items to consent. I mean, we used to have almost nothing on the consent, and then, so
This
there was a
time we
big
did really
improvement
good.
from about 2 years ago, and there's certainly always room for, and I think a lot of it depends on council comfort, for the items that you guys, what your comfort is, that's usually what a lot of cities use the consent agenda for, and which ones need discussion, and, I mean, part of that is also what items go onto that agenda. If you're gonna discuss policy, there isn't really a shortcut to it, it's just gonna be.
Well, yeah, I remember the days when we used to debate the wordings of minutes, nightmare. That wasn't my intent.
Yeah, that was only one person on council wanted to debate the merit, or the intent of the minutes.
Well, we did it when I was on planning commission.
Oh,
We
you
did
did?
it all the time too. And they would sit and read through them, and you'd wait for them to read through them,
Can you imagine that for some of the planning commissions we've had in the last couple of years now?
I know,
Where
she's
it's like
good at it.
midnight, 1.
Yeah.
Have we had a 1 AM planning commission? I feel like we have to have.
She also uses it.
I wasn't there for it.
I was.
It's why I
Yeah.
stopped going.
Yeah,
because
they get
their-
late.
Their meetings can be really inefficient.
Yeah.
We could could look at doing, some cities do an estimated time on the agenda, if that would be helpful to council, so like our best guess.
Your best guess is,
To like how long a topic might take.
yeah,
I've seen some cities do that as a, more so as a, just
Yeah, I've
a
seen that.
note to yourself.
Natalie also talked at the last meeting at, was talking to maybe Michelle or someone I overheard, was some cities have a guideline where a certain item, if it, after 2 hours or 3 hours hasn't progressed, that the default would be to table it. And obviously you could vote to not and just continue it if you needed to, but that way it might have some sort
2 to
of,
3 hours.
or whatever that you said
Oh.
that
We
number
could
is.
set it as an hour.
But I mean, for like the last meeting, we would have hit that,
Yeah, we tabled it.
right, after even longer.
It was
2 hours.
Yeah, it was
Yeah.
a long
Almost.
time. We
So maybe
tabled
it-
that thing at 10 o'clock.
Yeah, so maybe we have a 2 hour thing where we just say, okay, it's been 2 hours, we haven't settled it, do we table it right now? Then we could decide at that point, I don't know, just ideas.
We're getting better.
Yeah,
It just was an extraordinary topic, set of topics.
yep. Yeah, and sometimes you're just not gonna be able to avoid it.
And this, we're starting from scratch on light industrial like we did with residential.
Right,
8 or 10 years ago.
yep,
Tons of like, oh, we never thought of that. Oh, we never have had a light industrial park in our town.
yep. Yeah, and some of that we just gotta go through to learn.
Yeah.
You should stack it all into one column and auto sort it.
That would be brilliant, right?
It's late.
Is he sorting them already?
He's trying.
Yeah.
You're doing good, you're almost done.
Look at, I was doing it
I don't
on
know if
my.
this should be a goal or not. It's more just like a thing we should look at. But
ER
countdown, like timer clock, so people have a sense of
EL is planning.
like how long they can speak.
I'll ask Linda to look for options.
That'd be great.
Dean sets his timer on every
Or
time
even if it's something
somebody
up on.
talks.
Really?
Yeah, he sets his phone.
It's a good idea. I always like, I'll remember it like 30 seconds into it, and then I'm looking up at the clock, trying to remember what it was, writing it down, and then I
Should
just,
have a little clock in front of your,
Yeah, it was
that's what I was
something
saying, get
where-
like just a clock that counts down, you can set from the computer or some control, and,
Well, yeah, we all should be able to see it if we want to
Yeah, I'm wondering if we could put it
motion
on
to
the wall.
extend.
yeah, what, could we just like include it on a screen?
Put the timer on the screen.
We have clock technology.
I'm glad you cut people off, or you'd say something. Ron was very aware that it was 3 minutes, but sometimes,
It's, yeah, it's
He-
tough.
yeah, it's tough but necessary.
Right.
And I remember when Ravinia first came in, standing up there, they wouldn't let you talk if you were gonna reiterate the same thing another speaker said before.
If you were gonna.
If you were gonna, sorry,
Yeah.
yes. Because they didn't want to hear the same message 20 times, right?
Well, I know I've said that. I don't want to hear anything repeated. If somebody
I think
says.
people have generally been pretty good about that, especially when we've
Yeah.
highlighted
I
it.
think if you do it above the green line,
Like, if we, a couple times we've said that, I feel like people have come up and said, I agree with everything that person said, and this,
Yeah.
for the
You-
most
You
part.
could say by a show of hands, how many people agree with that
Yeah.
statement, or whatever.
I love John doing what he did.
Yeah.
Any of us in favor of the,
Oh,
That
gas
cut out, that
station.
probably cut out, you
that
know,
cut.
an hour of
3 hours out
discussion.
of that.
Yeah. It did.
I felt like it put you guys on the spot a little
Oh.
bit, but
It worked.
I took a chance.
you're welcome.
That's part of the, why have the public comment? You know,
Bef-
people
right.
get all fired up.
Yep.
And then, before the council says, no, this is a terrible idea.
Right.
Yeah, could we do that in the future? Of we talk first and then the public? Our thoughts and
Yeah.
feelings and everything else?
Think so. The only issue, I guess, would maybe, well, when it's a public
Wonder
hearing,
if that would shorten it up a little bit. Do the public hearing after we speak our
Yeah,
piece.
so I think with the public comment, we certainly can do that. We have one of the most robust public comment policies that I've seen in a lot of cities. So I think that we could certainly do that. In terms of a public hearing, sometimes we will have to open the public hearing. We should open the public hearing before we do comments. So I think it's depends on if we're talking about public comment opportunity or a public hearing.
The tricky
Public
part would be
hearing
when we
is-
have like a item with 5 or 6 things in it, and we typically do the public comment for all of them. How would we do it for like the 4th one if we wanted to have the conversation beforehand? I like the idea.
What if you did staff report, applicant comment, then public comment?
For each individual item?
Yeah, do we want to do it on all items, is the question.
Well, items that are, where you draw a lot of people into it, because I get this sense that they want to talk back, they want to do a lot of back and forth, which we want to avoid. But if they could just tailor their comments off the things that they know about and the things that they hear.
Yeah,
Instead
maybe
of
we
the
just do that
hearsay.
when
Yeah,
we
we could
expect
do it
it.
after.
It'll be a little trial and error and subjective when we think those items will be. But if we see one that clearly is going to be, then we just pull that separately, have the group public comment period before, 9, A, B, C, E, and then when we get to that D item, it's.
How's he doing,
Yeah,
Jeremy?
just
You added him at all?
I suppose you could come into the thing.
think he's got
where
it.
you Said this, not,
You can get at it.
Yeah.
yes, and,
Or-
and then.
All right, so we
No, that's
clumped
gotta
them
be
by, they don't match what's on the printout, but we clumped them by sort of, or I clumped them by department or general service area. The A's up there are kind of just sort of generalized admin tasks. The E's are engineering, public works. The budget processes, population growth, I gave that an F for finance. And we have a bunch of planning items, park, over here, 3 public safety, and then 5 that I, in the quick listing, didn't necessarily bundle with any specific department.
Right there, you got 7 different categories, 7 different priorities. We're done. We just have to set which ones we want done first.
Well, there's only one to pick from in finance. I'm cool with that.
Guess
I'm-
Maggie knows what she's doing.
Yeah, exactly.
So, Kathy, it's
good.
ideas on.
So for example, with admin, we could lump things under an IT architectural roadmap, an HR roadmap. For example, expanding the retention program beyond, so it's all departments, that would be an HR piece.
Okay,
Add that to the function of that roadmap.
so this would just go to this.
Correct.
right? That
It'd
would
be
part of that?
part of that whole roadmap
Okay.
for HR. What are the needs of the city right now and in years to come?
Okay. So I'm just gonna take this one off, or,
So do we have to write it in there somehow and, or just put retention? And then the next one would be part of the architectural roadmap. What does each, is my thought, what would each department need? And then citywide, what do we need?
okay,
So the technology improvements would be part of that. I feel like sometimes we buy systems that are onesie, twosie systems, and they don't integrate, nothing talks, and then we get bigger and bigger and bigger, and we want to make sure our systems are integrated.
Tom, I think the laserfish meeting code agenda parsing, those were specifics you wanted. Do you wanna leave that as a separate goal, or do you think it would get lost, or do you think what Kathy's suggesting, that develop an IT architectural roadmap? Integration citywide, department-wide, and we could even list such as,
Yeah, let's do, if we list such as
Mhm.
those, I'd be cool with that.
That would fall under the policy piece,
this one, right here?
I would think, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. Same with RFP policy, maybe just add that so that it's not only developed from a city HR lens, but also the department that it deals with, finance, planning, all of that. So
So you could modify this? I'm sorry, I wasn't following what you suggested here. So develop an RFP policy for.
part of the policy, which
Viewing
the second to the
policies
last one.
for consistency.
Right here?
Yeah.
yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I have the first list you made, so we can make sure it's not forgotten.
Okay.
That would fall under, where's the one that discussed, looking at contract positions? Would we need full-time positions? I think we have it in there somewhere.
Okay, I think, was it John, did you want, consider potential for bringing planning in-house?
I want that one to be separate.
You want
Yeah.
that to stand on its own, okay? So we're gonna leave that one stand on its own. IT roadmap, expand and develop an asset and fleet management, this probably could be a finance thing too.
Right.
But asset, fleet management, need system, lifecycle replacement. We have the work order ticket system, effective efficiencies for your services on there.
Yeah, you could probably put those two together, creating
Yeah,
some effective
similar.
efficiencies, system-wise.
Put that with this one?
I think so, because you want to make sure that your fleet is that you're tracking your fleet as well as, not only are we tracking equipment, but what services we're providing.
So like, for example, an asset management type system could also have a work order type system. If we were to ever buy a software that would help us create those, they're probably one and the same.
Okay.
IT knowledge bank saying yes.
Okay. Human resources roadmap, we talked about that, policies, and then improving our capacity for employee focus.
So in my vision for the city with a human resources roadmap, that includes
Okay.
an onboarding process, a stay interview, an exit interview, reviewing all of our pieces. Does that include the employee focus?
I think Matt's point was just making sure that we're staffed, our staff and workload management aligned, so we're not, so our employees are able to focus on the tasks they're supposed to do. Is that, that's what I kind of heard you say?
Yeah, specifically the capacity for supervisors to make sure that we have the bandwidth for the employee focus.
And would that fit within what you're viewing as human resources roadmap, evaluating how we grow, what positions we need, retention? Or is it, you think that's separate?
Part of me believes yes, because,
Yeah.
for example, I'm reviewing public works. Are some of our supervisory positions able to do their job, or are they having to do more of the line work, and how can we fix that moving forward?
So you're
Just
right.
as an example.
Yeah, I think there's definitely a staff planning component to it, so I think it was, yeah, pretty multifaceted, so.
Yeah, include it.
Have a component to that.
All right. I think that takes care of admin. Any other suggestions anybody has on the engineering side? You know, take ownerships of roads and trails sooner from new development, evaluate road designations, pedestrian crossings, crosswalk standards to ensure pedestrian safety, evaluating resource need and availability for internal engineering capability, update right-of-way ordinance, establish street lighting policies, redevelop new neighborhoods.
What does that one mean? What does the street lighting policy entail? Is that who owns them, or?
The
So,
streetlight
a bit-
policy.
Oh, the streetlight policy is just, the developer pays for the streetlights until we accept the street. So we're gonna be, we've accepted Bassett Crossing South 6 months ago, that's the only, there's 6 lights there. But every addition probably has 6 to 10 lights, and they have a monthly rate. And how do we, basically, the streetlight policy basically would be, is that rolled into the general fund? Do we do something in a user-based system? That's probably the two primary options.
Yep.
So we just don't have a written policy on how we'd basically manage that user that we buy, that electrical service that we buy.
When I lived in Apple Valley, it was part of our water and sewer bill, right? They just tacked it on there.
And that
That
was-
makes more sense than charging it to somebody like myself or John or Dean that does not have streetlights to put it in our general fund.
And there might be some streetlights, like the ones that, the taller ones right now that cover the road, we could carve those out, maybe those go into general, but maybe the neighborhood ones
Yeah.
are somehow allocated and passed along accordingly. So
Right.
it's probably a quick exercise, more of a technical,
You
item.
could
that
do
we
it
have to-
based on road classification or
You
something
could do
like
it,
that.
I mean, it would just be kind of, do you want to have us, you could, a staff report could almost take care of it. Do you want us to apply, bring back idea, are we just keeping it all in the general, or do you want us to look at a strategic approach by user-based approach? And then we could bring back what that looks like, and you guys could direct us to finalize. So it's not it's just a quick thumbs up or thumbs down on what you want to do, and then we can implement it. So.
Okay. So,
That's the hard part. Some of these are important, but they take less time. Some are 3 years. So
Yeah.
that's the challenge.
Is there ever a point where we'll get to where we can design or buy our own lights to have consistency in developments?
We are hodgepodge between XL and Right Hennepin, and they don't I think when I first started, at least Right Hennepin Right Hennepin had two choices.
Oh, they have
That's why
one.
the first edition has the different lights in it, and then they just cut that out. So you'd have to work with them on your specific one, and you'd have to almost purchase the lights and store the lights, and we'd have to have a conversation with them, but that's the process. They only offer one, so if we want to do something unique, we'd have to work with them and likely purchase those through a vendor ourselves that they would approve.
What do they do in other cities that are serviced by Right Hennepin? I mean, we got the same lights as Buffalo.
If you're in Right Hennepin, this is the only thing we offer.
I guess for anything.
If you
new,
go to
Buffalo,
XL, I think they
yeah.
offer,
Uh-huh.
I think there's maybe two, but that might even have gone back to one.
I'm pretty sure it's just one.
Yeah, they've really taken away the options. So I think some cities that are large enough might procure their own. So if that's a priority, we could probably work through this process. We got two entities that we'd have to navigate through and get approvals, but then you're talking about where you're storing them.
Right.
We don't have a lot of excess storage places. So, challenges that way, but we don't have many options. I'm just strictly saying, how do we navigate the price component is
Mhm.
what I put up there for
Yeah.
the streetlight policy, but
All right, so we'll leave streetlight policy as it is on there, so we're engineering, do those all look
Yeah, I
different
mean-
enough that they should be listed the way they are?
I think they're different enough tasks, yeah.
All right. Finance, we just had the one, line budget, process, so we'll get that one up there. Planning, we have about a dozen of them here. Reduce density in comp plan by increasing density in multi-use or multifamily, I believe is what the objective was there. Second, explore parking requirements to create additional green space. I know that isn't exactly how you said it, but generally, we can remove that. Third was update sign ordinance for community events. Fourth, update underlying zoning districts. I might have missed a detail or two there, but, number five, or the next one was incentivize P-lawns and drought tolerant plantings, conservation and water focus. Revisiting industrial park ordinances, envisioning what we'd like to see out of industrial development, commercial development. Next, verifying and ensuring consistency with our comp plan, planning. I think you described that one, Dean, and I'm not sure if I got all of it.
No, you did good.
Okay. Next was finish PUD project and cookie cutter developments. Then we had review zoning around commercial and industrial, consider types of land uses, buffers, impacts. Incentives for condos instead of rentals, consider changes to public notice policy, and then designated Corcoran a food-focused, you called it something.
Innovation District.
Innovation. Anything there capture your eye as duplicative?
Not so much for combining, but can I make a potential clarification or question to the first one? Reduce density and comprehensive plan by increasing density and multi-use. I'd say it's maybe that, and also tracking density in our current developments more, because like using the Hope one as an example, we're talking about what some of those densities might be, and it might be in the higher end of what the range is, but because we potentially do something like that there, knowing what exactly our densities overall as the city are, so that we might have more flexibility. Not necessarily like down zoning somewhere else, but it's knowing where we have flexibility to work with.
Yeah, do we even keep track of that?
Kind of, but not probably as well as we should.
Yeah.
So that's kind of what I was getting at. So like
Track density, consider,
track density, track development density for
I think. we-
potential flexibility
I
or
think we
reduction
didn't
in
Natalie
other
make a comment the other night.
areas of comprehensive plan. I
If
don't.
we do this over here, we could,
Yeah, but I think it was just
some-
philosophical, not necessarily analytical.
With the sketch plan? that was
Yeah, she did
presented?
say that, but she didn't say how much. She didn't say specifics.
just, the look on her face just looked like she had a chart already in place.
It's something we've talked about before.
Yeah, I don't know that we have, so we do have to track some development densities. The challenge is it has to, like, at the end of the year, we have to go back and look at it post-development, so there's just some time lag in between what we think it's going to be and what the final plans and plat gets to be.
And that's kind of
So-
what I'd like to do is,
Yeah.
when it's done, and it
So maybe
typically
it-
tends to go up a little bit more,
Yes.
then having those numbers easily accessible so that we can say, when another development comes in, and maybe it's at 2.8 units per acre instead of 3, well, we can do that because we have flexibility from,
We could look
it just has to be, the averages have to be within.
Yes.
I don't think the incentives align for that.
So,
I think even if we say, well, you can get by with less than you're proposing,
They're gonna
there's
want the
no reason
highest
why
they
they would
can-
accept that
Yeah.
unless there's a change in the
True.
range.
true.
Part of what zoning has to deal with is the incentive misalignment between the builder and the city and the residents.
So are you saying that you made the original one, right?
Yeah, I think what I would think is more effective is if you actually change the target density range in light of it being greater in
Maybe
multifamily.
go back to what the original, if you can, just Control Z it back to the original and then add plus track development density.
Control Z. All right. Are we done? Okay, so back to here and then say
Just add like,
track.
and track development density, or post.
If you track density like that and you can apply it over the overall city, can you then say, well, we're in excess of our density, and as opposed to saying you gotta be 3 to 5 in this area, say, well, in this area, we won't look at PUD to move beyond our current zoning ordinances, because we've already achieved our overall density in the community.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah.
I'm gonna struggle with that a little bit. If we all agree on the updates we've talked about, because I think in those cases, the PUD will have advantages that we wouldn't get from straight zoning, like the 15% set aside and some of those other things. So I don't know that I want to rule it out from a policy perspective necessarily. But I know what you're trying to achieve with it, and I think the goal makes sense.
Yeah, because we'd achieve larger lots in certain areas and whatnot.
Yeah.
Or maybe it's just as specific as we're not willing to look at lot size reduction, like lot width reduction as a PUD flexibility in this area because we've already hit our density.
Yeah.
But then are we gonna get in trouble by,
Not if our densities are already above.
but if a parcel is zoned 3 to 5 and we
It
tell
doesn't.
them our density
It just, the
there.
average has to be 3 to 5. Our plan corresponds with that exactly, but other cities do it in ways where they have some areas that are a little bit higher and some areas that are a little bit low. Like I think Medina has a 2.5 to 5 or 2.5 to 4.5. And then, their next bump up is a little bit higher than what our next bump up is.
So like, I think I'll just, it's to the whole group, but I'll ask you specifically. Like the concept of an agri-hood, in a MUSA area, if you don't have some additional capabilities banked, like you'll never get an agri-hood with 1/3 acre lots. But it would be an agri-hood would be pretty amazing to have inside
It would.
MUSA.
What the hell's a neighborhood?
It's a neighborhood with a farm built into it.
Yeah.
How'd I do? I think y'all were wondering what the hell it was, I just said it, so you're welcome.
It's like kind of like for the urban cowboys, but basically you you take a, it doesn't have to be an active barn, but, or an active farm, but you can, you know how they build houses around golf courses?
Yeah,
Like they're building housing developments around like farms. And maybe all the people buy into the farm and like they get part of their food from that
they can
farm.
have
There's like a
food plot
manager.
and, you know,
Or they have a food plot or
they
whatever.
raise animals on it to sustain.
Yeah, whatever whatever the the covenants are.
Or the
like,
farm is a horse farm and everybody around it
Yeah.
has their houses and they
Yeah.
share the.
now I thought you didn't know what one is.
Didn't know the
I call it something completely different.
Got up to
That's
speed.
educating.
I
just
guess,
call it
right.
A bunch of crazy horse owners that don't wanna own their own farm, that's what I call it.
Yeah, well, that's, I mean, you can, if you Google it, you'll find a bunch of examples of,
There's one like that in Rochester, a huge horse farm that's surrounded by homes and all those people.
people like that want to have cornfields in their backyard
Yeah,
get to buy into this place where they'll have cornfields in their backyard.
sounds cool.
And they, so they're called agri-hoods.
I'll write that down.
And we got all kinds of farmers around here that'll just keep planting corn, just like I said. Have you got any of that out in Delano?
Agri-farms or agri-hood?
Whatever he called them?
Yeah, no.
Okay. That's,
Unofficially.
that's pretty,
Unofficially, there you
that's
go.
pretty
That's pretty
interesting, man.
The
Yeah.
only other one that I saw in here, which I wondered about, is we have revisit industrial park ordinances, trading division, what we'd like to see. And like 3 later, we have review zoning around commercial, industrial, consider types of land uses, buffers, impacts.
Yeah, we
I think those
combine
are the
those.
same.
Yeah.
The same.
I was gonna ask whoever suggested those two, if they would agree to
So.
getting rid of one or combining them.
Dean, I
think
think
Alan
it was,
did one of them.
You had talked about industry and trying to define what we want and what we want to see. right?
Yeah, the industrial park, we'd got 2 huge variations recently, and the one I'm not crazy about as far as the size of the buildings, but so be it.
Are
The
you
other
all right
one looks
with-
a little bit
Are you all
better.
right with modifying your statement to review zoning around commercial, industrial, consider land uses?
Yes.
Yeah,
We're saying.
I think we
we're
have the
saying
same
thing.
plan in mind,
Yeah.
so.
Yep.
Okay, so on the park side, or sorry, are we good there?
Yep.
Okay. Park side, we have about, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Develop a new approach for park design to more rapidly construct dedicated parks. Establish park standards. Identify planned city trail corridors, more input and direction from the Parks and Trails and Planning Commission. More specifics / identify property for future parks. Develop a trail maintenance plan, finish open space park near Ravinia, update off-road trail plan, develop phasing construction, future plans. Seek donations for park master plan and other identified park goals. Proactively plan future park amenities, develop long-term needs.
I think you can combine the design ones,
Yeah.
the rapid approach, there was one with amenities or whatever the needs.
So develop a new approach for park design to more rapidly construct dedicated parks and proactively plan future park amenities, develop long-term needs, is that the one?
I
Or
feel
no?
like.
I think that
One
one
of
was
the park
different.
standards.
That was more
I
like,
think that with park
Yeah, and the
standards
park
would be
standards.
great.
They both were Jeremy's, and he had them be separated.
I'm okay putting those two together.
Which two, Jeremy?
More specifics, identify property, future parks could go with develop a new approach for park design.
Okay.
Well,
I was thinking with park standards.
Yeah, I was thinking the first and second one under parks,
These two?
yeah. But those two are Jeremy's, and the develop,
I'm fine with that. We can put those together.
1 and 4?
1 and 2.
1 and 2? You all right with that too, Alan? I think you had the established park standards, or no, Jim?
I think it was
Yeah,
Jeremy.
Jeremy.
They're both.
Trail corridors and update off-road probably could be one.
Does trail maintenance fit into that? Into the planning aspect, or do one of those separate?
I don't know, I just think there's gonna be more of an immediate need for that.
Yeah, that's fair.
I mean, I gotta imagine Ravinia is gonna be turned over this year. There's only 5
Or there's gonna be a
homes
lot
left.
turned over.
I think there'll be about up to half of it turned over probably by mid-year.
Yeah,
If we don't
So
do anything.
likely- I mean, there's, keep in mind, trail maintenance, there's summer component and winter component.
right.
But the winter component probably takes a little bit more conversation.
Yeah.
do we even have the equipment to brush off?
Yeah, we've started, it was in the CIP to try a couple things out, yeah.
Oh, okay.
So it's really more of a policy and staffing, like, do you pay overtime to do trails, what's the priority, or roads come first? It's expectations and.
Well, and then like, do you set a difference, right? So Gleason Parkway's got trails on both sides. Do we maintain both sides in the winter or just one side?
Yeah,
Right.
it's a big conversation, but it's imminent,
Yeah.
as you said.
Yeah.
So I think it should be some line item.
Yeah.
personally.
That works.
All right, so if we leave the rest of the park items on here, without merging any, we have 3 public safety that all appear to be unique. Deploy automatic license plate readers, research and pilot electric squad car, accelerate planning and action for fire, rescue, and first responder services. We then have some that I didn't categorize, revisit and evolve Corcoran's vision, logos, brand identity, I think you threw that one out. Increase involvement and engagement of commercial and industrial landowners. Be quick reacting to potential and new legislation. Continue to evaluate public facilities and land planning program. And creating a community engagement fund.
I can rescind, be quick reacting to, because that's hardly a goal statement, but I would maybe just publicly say that. we
Something to
need
keep
be
in
quick.
mind.
Yes,
Hey, everyone be aware of this,
yes.
okay?
The Corcoran vision one, do you think there's an issue with our vision, or do you think it's our ordinances don't match up to our vision now? I'm thinking, personally, I mean, it comes up a lot, and I'm thinking we need to bring our ordinances in line with what our vision is versus changing our vision to match what our ordinances are now.
I'll make it simple. People go back to our logo. The barn, the farmhouse,
Yeah.
the cattails and the geese. The city ain't doing none of that stuff. They aren't preserving any of it. That's how many
I hear about
times
it in
have you
my own
heard it
house.
say? Huh?
I hear about it in my own house. Every time.
I'm just saying, it,
So we should put a big
It's-
development on as our.
yeah, just
Logo.
one great
Chainsaw.
big
Jeez.
gridded neighborhood. It-
Bulldozer.
Yeah.
If we can continue to live with what we have, we can erase it.
I think
People
it's
keep saying
aspirational.
that it's,
I think it's aspirational, and I think it's taken 2.5 years to come close to having code allow us to actually reflect it in some way, but I think we're close. I wouldn't give up on it yet, Dean.
He's ready to throw in the towel.
We're
He's
not-
got all that stuff right in his house. And
Yeah.
he just wants to throw it away.
you just gave me that whole Egger farm deal. I'm trying to figure out a way to buy all the land around me and put a house,
Yeah.
have a nice big horse farm.
Neighborhood.
Neighborhood. Yes.
Okay, any other changes, any other modifications? We've got 36 of them.
Do you want to keep the Vision logo and brand?
Don't need to.
I think we just go with the picture of the Lorax for our logo.
That's pretty good.
Jeremy says it's aspirational, maybe not though.
It's not gonna get voted up, so you can remove it. I wanted to bring it up, guys.
Okay.
It's so unlike mine where he's saying we need to pay more attention to the
Yeah.
logo and what we're all about. Right?
Kinda.
Okay.
Bottom of county, I keep thinking about that too.
It's not on the
Barns and
list for the
silos
first-
everywhere.
Barns and
It's
styles.
not on the list for the first time.